Welcome back, second graders. Today is Thursday, May 28th, 2020, and we are going to jump into a new math lesson in just a second. I want to remind you guys that this week is Hat and Accessories Day, Hat and Accessories Week, so that's why I'm wearing my Boston Red Sox hat today. Definitely keep sending those pictures in to Miss Hammond, to your teachers, and if your parents want to post them on our parent Facebook page so that people can see your love, your excitement, and your spirit for distance learning. Awesome. Today for math, we're going to be jumping into a new concept, and it has to do with measurement, but it's called perimeter. Now, perimeter is the total distance around a shape. And in order to figure out the perimeter of a shape, you need to do some measuring and some adding. So today, we are going to be taking a look at quadrilaterals. Now, a quadrilateral, if you don't remember from when you first learned about them in kindergarten, a quadrilateral is a four-sided shape. So you can talk about a rectangle, a square, a rhombus, a parallelogram, a trapezoid, or any shape that has four sides. And we are going to be figuring out what the perimeter of those quadrilaterals are. Now again, the perimeter is the distance around a shape. So if you look at this example here, I'll zoom in even more, we can see that this rectangle has a measurement of 10 feet on the top, 10 feet on the bottom, and 5 feet on either side. So the distance around a shape would mean if you were walking around this rectangle, how many feet would you walk to go from here to here, then keep going from here to here, then you would keep walking from here to here, and then from here back to where you started from. That would be the distance around the shape, and you would figure that out by doing some addition. 10 plus 10 plus 5 plus 5. And when you add those numbers up, you get 30 feet. Though the perimeter, or the distance around the shape, equals 30 feet. So we're going to use that to help us answer today's problem-solving task. So I'm going to zoom out, and I want to make sure that you can still see our example of our perimeter. And you are going to pause the video, and you are going to figure out what the perimeter of this quadrilateral. This quadrilateral is called a parallelogram, and it's a parallelogram because it has two sets of lines that will never intersect. They will never hit each other, but instead they keep going on forever. So I want you to use this example and what we just went over to figure out the perimeter of this quadrilateral. Go ahead and pause the video to figure it out. Awesome. I hope you've had some time to figure out the perimeter, and now we're going to go over it together. So just like I mentioned before, figuring out what the perimeter of this quadrilateral or parallelogram is requires us to think about, imagine we were walking around this parallelogram. We start here, and we're going to be walking around, going from this side to this side, then down here, then all the way over here, and then back up to where we started again. And we need to figure out how many inches you just walked. So that would be the distance around this shape. So the measurements are here for you. 9, 3, 9, and 3. So all you have to do is add up the measurements of each side. So that means 9 plus 3 plus 9 plus 3 equals something. Now I'm going to add, and I'm going to rearrange this number sentence because I did it in the order, almost like a clock, like the hand goes like this. I did it in that same order. Now I'm going to arrange it so that my biggest numbers are together, and my shortest numbers comes last, or the smallest numbers. So 9 plus 9 plus 3 plus 3. 9 plus 9 is a doubles fact. That equals 18. 3 plus 3 is a doubles fact. That equals 6. So now I have to figure out what 18 plus 6 is. Well, 8 plus 6, that's 14, and 10 more would be 24. 24 inches. So the perimeter, which is the distance around the shape, is 24 inches. Awesome. We're going to practice figuring out the perimeter or the distance around a shape together. So we're going to do these first three together. I'm going to zoom in the best that I can so that we can see it. Awesome. So this first shape here is a quadrilateral. It has 4 sides, and it just happens to be a square. Now the reason why I know it's a square is because every side has the same length, 18, 18, 18, and 18. If I was figuring out the perimeter of this shape, that means the distance around. So if this was my starting point, I would be walking here, figuring out that distance, all the way to here, here, and then back up to my starting point. So what is the total distance around this shape means I need to add these numbers together. So that's 18 plus 18 plus 18 plus 18 equals something. So I'm going to do some doubles fact work. 18 plus 18. Some of you might know that in a snap, but the other way that you can solve it if you don't know it in a snap is add your tens first. 10 plus 10, that's 20. Then 8 plus 8 is 16. So 20 plus 16 equals 36. Now I'm going to add 18 and 18 again. I already know that equals 36. So to figure out the perimeter of this square, I need to add 36 and 36 together. Well, 30 plus 30, that equals 60. 6 plus 6, that equals 12. 60 plus 12, 72. And I need to include the label. So the distance around shape 1 is 72 feet. Now let's take a look at shape number 2. Shape number 2 is not a square because not every side is the same. Shape number 2 is a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides, and it's actually a rectangle because 2 sides have the same length and the other 2 sides have the same length. So I need to figure out the perimeter, which means I need to figure out the total distance around this shape. So I need to measure all 4 of these sides, which the measurements we have already here for us, and now I need to do some addition. So my first side is 5, my second side is 3, then I have 5 here on the bottom, and 3 more going back to my starting point. So 5 plus 3 plus 5 plus 3. I can rearrange this so that my biggest numbers come first and my smallest numbers come second. When I rearrange it like this, my doubles facts come next to each other to make it a little bit more organized. So 5 plus 5, that's 10. 3 plus 3, that's 6. What's 10 plus 6? 16. So the perimeter equals 16 inches. I have to remember that unit. 16 inches. Remember, when we're finding the perimeter, we're figuring out the distance around the shape, the total distance. And so we have to add the measurement of each side. Now let's take a look here at the last one, number 3. Number 3 is a parallelogram. It's a parallelogram because it has 2 sets of parallel lines that will never intersect. And as you can see, these lines measure the same. So this line and this line, and this line and this line measure the same. So if I have to figure out the total distance around this shape, I need to figure out how and add all of my measurements together. I really like to do this visual here with my arrows because it helps remind me what I'm solving for, the distance around the shape. All right, so my first side measures 9 yards. My second side is 13. This bottom side here is 9, and this last side here, going back to my starting point, is also 13. So just like before, I'm going to rearrange my measurements here so that my biggest measurements come first and my smallest measurements come second or last. And now I have my doubles facts next to each other. 13 plus 13, well, 10 plus 10 is 20. 3 plus 3 is 6, so 26. And 9 plus 9, 18. So now I'm going to add these numbers together. 20 plus 10, that's 30. 6 plus 8, that's 14. So 30 plus 14 equals 44. And my unit here is yards. So 44 yards is the total distance around this shape. And remember, when you're solving for perimeter, you're solving for the total distance around the shape. And you do that by adding up all of the sides. Awesome. This next problem, I'm going to have you pause the video once we go over it, and I want you to solve it together. Solve it by yourself before we solve it together. It says, my mom is creating a rectangular garden. Ooh, that's going to be important. A rectangular garden in our backyard. The length of the garden is 8 feet and the width of the garden is 5 feet. Just in case you can't see this, because I did circle over it, that says 8 feet. So the length of the garden is 8 feet and the width of the garden is 5 feet. What is the perimeter of the garden? Okay, so I want to just give you a couple hints here. This is going to be what we call length. And this is what we call width. This is the direction of how you would measure it. Okay, length and width. So go ahead and try your best. This is a little bit challenging, but I think you're going to be able to handle it. So go ahead and do your best. Pause the video to try to figure out the perimeter of the rectangle that's being described here. Go ahead. All right, hopefully you've had a chance to try your best to figure out the perimeter of this rectangle. I'm actually, in order for us to solve it, I'm going to draw a rectangle. I hope some of you decided to do that too, just to have an idea, just to have a visual idea on your paper to help you. Not the perfect, not the most straightest rectangle, but it's a rectangle. And I know it's a rectangle because two sides are the same length and the other two sides are going to be. Now, it says that in my mom's rectangular garden, the length of the garden is 8 feet and the width of the garden is 5 feet. So length is going left to right. So that would be 8 feet. Because this is a rectangle, this side would also be 8 feet because these opposite sides measure the same length. And then the width of the garden, so what we're calling up and down here, would be 5 feet. And because it's a rectangle, the opposite sides measure the same. So these would be the measurements of this rectangle. So now we're going to be able to figure out what the perimeter is. Remember, the perimeter is the distance around the shape. So if we have our rectangle here, we have to figure out the distance around the shape, and that means we need to add up our measurements. I'm going to do this, let's see. I'll do it right here. So that would be 8, my first side, plus 5, plus the bottom here would measure 8, and 5 more. Awesome. Now I'm going to rearrange this so that my doubles facts are next to each other. That means I'm putting my largest numbers first, and my last number should be my smallest numbers. Great. 8 plus 8, 16. 5 plus 5, 10. So 16 and 10 make 26. And we're talking about feet. So we just figured out that the perimeter equals 26 feet. Now remember, perimeter is the distance around a shape. As you are working on your exit ticket, it's super important that you keep reminding yourself what perimeter is. Perimeter is the total distance around the shape, so you have to measure. If you were figuring this out, if I gave you a shape and I would ask you to measure it, but we're giving you shapes that have measurements, and so your job is to add up the measurement of each side in order to figure out the perimeter or the distance around the shape. Right now, please jump into your exit ticket and get started working on that. If you have any questions at all about perimeter, please don't hesitate to reach out to your teacher. Awesome. I will be back tomorrow with another video.